Rootin' tootin'.
Oh, boy. Cowboy.
Cowboy. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy, cowboy.
What is a gun?
What is a gun? A mechanism that is made of metal that fires metal. That's what I've got.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think you could also potentially use it in hobby or sport. Self-defense, both in the home and in the state of Florida. Just walking down the street, pop, pop.
Stand your ground.
Yep.
There are people who live in Alaska that, like, if they didn't have guns, they would not be able to hunt the things they do. I mean, you can bow hunt, but it's a lot more efficient to use a firearm.
Especially if it's for survival.
Yes, because they're living out in the middle of nowhere and they have to hunt to survive. And if they don't, they're dead.
Sport hunting's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say also just semi-automatic long guns. Just a totally different ballpark.
Yeah.
That's so true.
I think this is more focused around, like, your defensive and your hunting. And even hobby.
Well, yeah, some people just, I'm sure, get a bunch of friends together and just go skeet shooting.
Yeah.
You know, like those clay pigeons that they do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've actually been... I've been to that before. I was super young.
Oh.
I did not shoot a gun. Like I said, never shot a gun.
Yeah, right.
By the way, everyone, never shot a gun.
Yeah.
So
They're fun, but they're very... You have to remember that you can stop someone's existence with the pull of trigger. So you have to be very responsible around them.
yeah,
I mean, I would even remind someone to use extreme caution when firing a bow, and even that's a lot harder to accidentally shoot someone with. But a gun is just, it's so touchy. It's so important to learn how to handle them responsibly and treat them with respect. And it's very scary to me to think about the fact that some people own weaponry but are not responsible with that weaponry. But that's a whole nother thing we can get off on. But I don't know.
I think we will kind of get into that, and that plays into this rights and freedoms, especially in America. It's written into the Constitution that you can own and maintain a firearm.
Yeah, you
if
have
you're
the
a
right
citizen.
to have bear arms. You can have bear arms mounted on your wall from a bear you
Conceal
killed.
carry some bear arms.
someone watch Family Guy.
Oh, is that what that's from? Is that the
Yeah.
joke? The bear arms
It's-
joke?
yeah.
Okay. All right. I knew I heard it from somewhere.
Kind of TV show you just turn your brain off for,
Yeah,
and it
it's
becomes
not,
funny.
I don't know, but
It's not. I'm not shitting on Seth MacFarlane here, but he was supposed to be on 9/11 plane. Anyway,
he was, and he wasn't. That's crazy. That's insane. One thing just totally permanently changed the outcome of everything.
definitely saw a lot of American pride. I'm just gonna put it that way. After 9/11, post 9/11, and with that, I think a reassessment of American rights and freedoms, in the sense that people became kind of reinvigorated.
They allowed the Patriot Act.
Right.
Gung ho America.
They did that too. They said, "Yeah, have my freedoms. If that means we can." It was
You
like
can
a vengeance
watch me
tour.
all night and all day.
It was yeah. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about good old rootin' tootin' guns, and
That makes you sound so American. It's funny though, because it's like
tootin'.
I think it's just hilarious because if
Only in
someone,
America we do some rootin' and tootin'. Yeah.
When people envision America, I think they imagine a dude in cowboy attire
They just
saying "Rootin'
imagine
Tootin'"
Texas.
with a flag and burgers,
Have you ever seen that picture of I'm a foreigner and this is what?
and they drew America.
And it's
and
Texas.
Yeah,
It's just like most of it.
Yeah.
And you have like New York and California.
yeah,
Florida.
yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's not that funny.
you know what? It's not that funny because it makes me very sad.
That's what other people think of us, and
Yeah.
that's in a comical light. Imagine a cynical light.
Stereotypically, Europeans are drinking tea and they're so proper and polite.
Why is that so bad?
God
Why
forbid.
is that so
No,
bad?
I'm not saying it's bad. I just think it's.
Why? Like, what is wrong
I just
with
think
that?
it's really funny that when you stereotype most other countries, you think of how great they are in a lot of ways, and then
Yeah.
us, we're just like guns and fast food.
Well, but if you think about it, when you think about the time that America became a world power, Hollywood was in the spotlight creating the biggest movies that
The
anybody's.
westerns,
Yeah, and they were
Oh,
westerns.
Yeah.
They were influenced by culture. I don't know if you ever did watch that YouTube video that Rohan sent.
I still
But-
haven't watched that.
It's that kind of
Happy Days.
like Happy Days, yeah. That's I think what the American stereotype is drawn from,
I think.
and I think it's changing.
Yeah.
But not necessarily for the better. I don't know.
It's interesting. One thing for sure throughout all of American history is that it has been a law that you can bear arms. Yes, yes. And you can just have a civic possession of firearms. There are other places and other territories that allow such a thing, but America definitely stands out when it comes to gun laws compared to other countries.
Yeah, I agree. There are 3 territories or countries that have an estimated civil possession of firearms. An estimated what? 3 territories or countries that have an estimated civil possession of firearms. It doesn't make sense. But essentially, these places have no guns in civilian hands.
Wow.
Every other country or territory in the world does. At least one citizen has a gun.
Sorry, side note. Didn't they totally ban firearms? Is that Australia?
I
Forget.
think so.
So,
But civilians can still get guns.
Oh?
If you need it for hunting, it's very easy to get. Well, I wouldn't say very easy. I don't really know the process, but there's a process you can go to and apply to get a hunting gun for survival.
Huh.
Or
Interesting.
in some other instances, they might allow you to have a gun. But hunting is one of those big ones, especially in California where guns are pretty much illegal. There's still people there that have to hunt for food. They can get a gun to hunt, but it's got to be bolt action. It's a hunting rifle, yeah.
Right.
but that's not really what the American experience is like.
No,
Right.
it's
Whatsoever.
not.
We are definitely kind of born into this very unique experience. I'll just put it at that. There are other countries, though, that have a high count of civilian ownership of weapons.
But
Yeah.
so
that's true.
we have the top 10 here, and it's number of firearms per 100 people. The U.S. is 120 firearms per 100 people. The second highest is 62 in the Falkland Islands. 62 guns per 100 people.
Wow.
That's half of America's firearm
Yeah,
per
that's number 2.
100 people, and that's number 2.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So the U.S. definitely stands out.
Yeah, and then Yemen coming in at number 3 at 52.8. That's and what bottom dollar we got Finland at 32.4, number 10. That's nutty.
Yeah.
It's definitely something different.
We have a lot of guns.
We sure do. It's because it's protected in our Constitution. That's something that's pretty unique to the United States. It's the Second Amendment of our Constitution.
I have a question
Go for it.
at the end, but I'm going to... I was saving it for the end. But you know what? I think the timing is right.
Okay.
Is it too late for gun reform?
Okay, I'm going to say something because I kind of was thinking this and then you just mentioned this. I think it is very interesting that the whole reason civilians being able to have easy access and acquisition and ownership to firearms was mainly because of potentially overthrowing your government if things get bad. But I think we're kind of at that point, and maybe I'm wrong, that no matter how many guns if we took arms right now and tried to combat our government, I don't think it's happening.
I think
that's an oversimplification of the reason that guns are
Oh, sure.
part of our Constitution.
Yeah.
I think
That
the
may have
people
been
that
part of it,
defend the
but that was-
Constitution are the ones that own the guns.
Yeah.
That's sort of
And that's sort of the irony, right?
yeah. It's sort of like what you said, that if you own them, so you have the ability to overthrow your government, but it's really not that cut and dry. I think it was more about personal protection of your property, your family, and yourself.
Yeah.
Because I don't. It was created with the intent that the government can't come and take your land, or the military can't just set up shop in your living room because they're on a war path towards DC, right? Like in the Civil War.
Yeah.
So 10,000 soldiers show up to your front lawn. You have a shotgun. Who will win?
But it's your right to go down.
Fighting.
But isn't
right.
there that one law that... Oh, wait, you're saying people... Okay, hold up. I was thinking about that... Yeah, what is it that soldiers allowed
I'm just
to
thinking
take
to myself,
residence?
they're not
okay,
allowed to.
I'm
They're not
taking-
allowed to.
Not anymore?
No, they were
Was that not a thing before?
They cannot take residence.
quartering.
Ah.
That's a different.
Yeah.
That's a different article.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the important distinction is in the time that it was written, we were more a militia-based military.
Correct, yeah.
It was state militias that were loaned to the federal government.
Okay.
But now the federal government just owns the military.
Right.
It's the Third Amendment, I think.
Yeah.
For quartering. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. I said article. I meant amendment.
So,
You're an American and you don't know your Constitution.
I was a political science major and I
Yeah.
don't know my Constitution.
Oh, Lord.
But that's kind of, I mean, the lunacy of it is that you have to imagine yourself in a 1770s elitist perspective when you're looking at the Constitution. Like, what do they mean? That's the big question. It's like, what does that mean, the Second Amendment? Well,
Right.
it's clear that we've determined it means that you have the right to own guns, specifically firearms and long guns at this stage. But it's the why that's the problem. Is that it's not expressed. It's just,
Right.
this is why. There's nothing in there. So I don't really know. It's a good question as to why. I think a lot of people debate that.
like I was kind of saying, on the lines of why, I think it's sort of this crime deterrent in some instances, like Kennesaw, Georgia,
Yeah.
that has a law from 1982. Every head of household residing in the city limits is required to maintain a firearm. Now, while they don't enforce it legally, you're not going to get arrested for not carrying around a gun. It is a crime deterrent. They have less than 2% violent crime, and obviously this isn't. Obviously correlation doesn't mean causation. Their crime rates are low, but it could be because of the area that they live in, or it's a small town,
Or just the people and the culture.
right.
Yeah.
But
I was kind of wondering what the population was, but go on.
that's a good question. Well, considering there are 1,611 Part 1 crimes per 100,000 in population, with low crime rates, I'd say that they have a pretty decent sized population. It's actually right outside Atlanta, Georgia.
I recognize the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of sticks out. But yeah, like you said, I'm not sure if the correlation between that, because do people really know that law exists? Is that like something
living there,
that
they
like
absolutely do.
Yeah.
The people there, yeah.
so
Yes,
do
you-
people follow that then?
Well, so I guess you were saying it's...
Around 50%, more than 50% of the population of Kennesaw owns a gun.
So
Gotcha.
it's one of those things, I
Okay.
guess, where if for some reason you have an interaction with police and they find out that you don't own a firearm, you don't get penalized for it.
Right.
However, it is it's kind of just the law is an incentive for people to acquire firearms.
And also crime deterrent.
Yes,
They see
because
wow,
it
this
creates a crime
town
deterrent.
legally everybody has a gun.
Yeah, so I'd
I'm
like to
not
think
gonna-
if I were some guy who was planning on robbing something, I'd second guess it if I go,
Right.
oh, there's a
And-
potential
and-
that almost anyone I rob
and
has a gun.
That is
Right.
the intention of
Yeah.
it. And I
Yeah.
think that is a cheap alternative to increasing police forces and expanding your police force as a response to crime.
Okay.
If you have an armed population, it's, I think, a more effective crime deterrent than even like CCTV surveillance that Britain has implemented.
Huh. No, I mean, that does make a lot of sense. Because if you have. Well, I don't want to say more guns means more safety because in
Right,
a lot of
you would have
circumstances
to-
it doesn't, but.
I think, at least my thought process with the whole police force, where you don't have to fund the police as much because you can have a smaller force
Correct.
with more armed civilians, and then redirect those funds to training civilians in firearm uses, offer free classes at the local police station, make sure that people have access to
Yeah.
actual training.
And people are
And-
educated in how to be responsible
Right.
with their firearms.
And even potentially make that part of the background check. You have to have some sort of license, some course that you've taken, because you have to do it for hunting. At least in Pennsylvania, and you
That's
have
such
to
a
take
good
a
point.
hunting course before you can buy a license.
Well,
Why?
'cause
Why
you-
can I just buy a gun then?
You were saying, like, you went to a PA gun show, and, like, let's say I owned a gun. I could go to that PA gun show, I could set up shop in that parking lot, and I could say, hey, I'm selling this gun for this much.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong on the details, but I could essentially hand you over, what is it, like the permit for that firearm? Or what would you call it?
Well, you can just
I-
give them the gun.
I give you the gun and whatever documentation you need for it, and then you give me cash
have it.
if you have it, and then you give me cash, and now you own
Yep.
that firearm.
Yep.
And I think that's what's scary to me is exactly like you said, like the education behind that firearm. I think it's very important that people are educated on how to be responsible with, how to use, and how to understand the repercussions of owning a firearm before they're allowed to own one.
And I think in just American contemporary politics, the ideas for restrictions have been maybe make the sentencing for gun-related crimes more severe.
Okay.
Maybe charge or allow the victims to sue the dealer of the gun.
Well, now here's a question. If I rob a convenience store with a knife, do I get charged the same way if I rob it with a gun?
Armed robbery.
So it's technically just armed robbery?
Yeah.
That's
There's
interesting.
probably degrees.
Yeah.
There could be. I'm not entirely sure.
Typically, they break down like a law into different, degrees of crime. So
And it's also based on past
like
cases, like other people that have robbed.
Okay.
armed
certain
robbery with a
places with a
firearm can be
versus
a
a firearm,
totally
yeah.
different thing as
Yeah.
well.
There's just so many ways to get guns.
There's a lot of loopholes, and that's part of the problem. And especially the deep web, it's so easy to just buy a gun online.
You could probably just mine for Bitcoin and then
for
buy
like
it with
a month,
with
and
Bitcoin.
then- yeah. Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Sir, you got a big package coming in from California. Oh, yeah, that's just my friend Mary Sue who sends me things.
California's not selling guns.
Well, it's a joke, but you know.
We definitely come from Alabama,
There's a lot of different ways.
maybe Florida.
And yeah, I think I'm not sure about the same accessibility in terms of other countries,
Yeah.
because when I think about it, if packages go through an X-ray scanner and there's a gun there, is that not automatically inspected in America?
I truly do not know.
So I don't know that they actually scan your mail, unless they really have a reason to.
Your mail. Okay, I see what you're
They
saying.
do sniff. They do use dogs dogs to sniff for bombs. not even drugs. They don't really sniff. They can't smell drugs usually. They're usually bomb sniffing dogs, so they might be able to pick up on a firearm if there's ammunition or if it's been fired before.
That makes sense.
That blows my mind.
Yeah,
That a dog can just smell gunpowder. Like,
And then,
yeah.
and then you can
I mean, I know they
train
can.
it,
It's obvious, but like, wow.
and then you can train it to sit down when it smells a certain smell.
Yeah.
When it smells gunpowder, it will sit. When it smells
If this, then
anthrax,
that. It's
yeah,
like
right,
coding a
exactly.
dog.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
okay. So Derek, you were actually talking to me about this before, and this was pretty interesting. That you were talking to me about this before. That whole shooting with the Dark Knight thing.
Yes.
When that guy, what he dressed up like the Joker, kind of, or he did his hair green, and then walked into a theater, and he shot a lot of people.
Yeah, he did. And it was... I remember being in Colorado shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
It was... I don't know when exactly the shooting took place.
Yeah, what year was that? Does anyone remember? Well, I guess it was the Dark Knight, which...
2014?
No, Dark Knight came out in 2008 or something like that. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. I was there, I was there, I think, probably 2 years after. It was still kind of eerie. Yeah, James Holmes wounded 70 people and then killed 12.
That still is insane to me. Wounded 70 people.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, not all 70 were directly shot. Like, it was in an indirect...
Well, I guess imagine if he shot
ricochet
someone and then
or-
it flew through that person and
yeah,
then hit another person.
collateral damage.
Also, probably the stampede trying to get out of the theater. People got trampled. probably
Yeah,
trying to
people
get
get hurt
down.
or...
What year was that? Was that 2008?
Yeah.
That was 2008.
It was
okay.
like during the releasing of it too. It was
In
because
theaters, yeah.
obviously to wound that many people. I mean, it was one of the best movies of all time.
At the time, yeah.
No, because they did the whole Jared Leto Joker. They kind of, I think, well, with all due respect to Heath Ledger, that was one of the greatest acting performances of all time.
Don't get me wrong, I really like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but Heath Ledger's Joker was something special.
He embodied what the Joker is supposed to be, even though the Joker changes with every universe or whatever.
Yeah.
Every instance, he's
Yeah,
different.
every role.
Right,
Yeah.
but he just did such an amazing job. I think it was the type of Joker he was too, just the nihilist sort of...
Yeah, I think it was more down to earth. Where, like, Heath Ledger's Joker was more comic book Joker in, like, a dark sense. It was a dark comic book Joker.
Yes.
I think that Joaquin Phoenix's was more about mental health.
Yes.
It was showing his insanity.
Right.
It was the progression of him
a-
into the Joker. Yeah.
Mhm.
Showing, I think the whole critique of the film was sort of, this is how society can shape a person into being who they are. And that was so
yes.
cool.
Yes.
Yes.
Which it totally plays into the whole James Holmes thing. I mean,
But it didn't directly inspire him, I don't think. Based on what I was reading, his psychosis started way earlier,
Right.
like years
Yeah, I
before.
don't think that James
and he
Holmes actually had anything like with the Joker. I don't think he
No,
was
but
trying to model himself after the Joker.
I guess I'm just saying that society, and obviously because of probably just his genetics and having being predisposed to having mental health issues, he turned into a product of that.
Yes.
And I think it's possible that James Holmes was in a very situation in which he feel like he was slowly starting to degrade into something, and he decided to don a role because of the situation and embrace that. I mean, you even said he was a PhD student at Colorado University.
Yeah,
That's
he was
insane.
He was actually even going for neuroscience. Like his undergrad
That's
was in
nuts.
neuroscience. He did so a part of
So he was really smart, potentially.
his trial was he pled not guilty on account of insanity.
Wow.
So a caveat with that is social workers are allowed to talk during, they're allowed to testify, actually. So...
I just feel so bad for that guy. Because that's the thing, is
I
people
don't feel
can
bad
be...
for him.
Well, people can say, oh, he was a monster, he shot people, but I'm thinking, for you to be at that point, you are so broken.
I wonder.
I feel bad for him in the sense that the system allowed him, because part of it is the system can't stop these sort of things.
It's not really designed to, which is why armed citizens is a good crime deterrent,
Well,
potentially.
It could
Yeah.
be. I mean, the fact that it was in Colorado, and I mean no disrespect to the good state of Colorado because they do things differently, especially surrounded by red states. They switch it up. So, shout out to Colorado. But otherwise, yes, you're right, James. If someone who was armed attempted to fire back at him and maybe kill him, that would have definitely deterred it. He did purchase. Now, my point in all of this is he purchased all the weapons legally. He went to several different gun stores, purchased a Glock, an Remington 870, and a sporting rifle. He purchased smoke grenades on the internet, spike strips meant for any sort of cop chase at the end. Purchased that on the internet. Purchased an assault vest, a Kevlar vest
he
on
also
the
had
internet.
a background check done, and he came out clean.
Clean 3 times. He purchased
Clean
all
3
three.
times.
Yes, all 3
Wow.
of those guns, and of course he was seeing a psychiatrist, multiple therapists. He did seek psychological services. In fact, he called a crisis hotline a few minutes before that occurred, but the call ended early. And I don't mean, because I think it's still very much up for debate whether or not the gun laws in America are sufficient to stop the crimes that occur. We haven't even talked about school shootings. We
Wow.
haven't even talked
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
all of the things that happen with legal weapons. Not to mention the fact that, so some other things that you could consider. The variability in human emotion. This goes back to the Aurora shooting. Someone is mentally stable now, but what about later?
Yeah, well, like, as far as the government was concerned and all the background checks and the people who sold them the weaponry, they thought, oh, this James Holmes guy, he's fine. He's totally clean. But then I see what you're getting at. Like, you could be totally stable, quote unquote, and fine beforehand, but you have that gun, and after 8 years goes by, you slowly sink into psychosis, unfortunately, and now maybe you misuse that firearm. And it's even scarier to think that people can appear perfectly fine and appear stable, but they can still acquire this weaponry without being entirely in a state of mind in which they should be getting hands on it. It's scary.
Okay, and another consideration that I have is the idea of a serial number. Now, I'm not too sure how this works yet again, and I probably could use some enlightenment on this, but from what I understand, the serial number goes on the gun.
Yep.
And you can scratch it off.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily registered to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not necessarily registered to you. You can scratch off the serial number and basically sell it to whoever you want. And at that point, they own an illegal weapon.
Yeah, so if you kill someone with your gun and then the police find out and they handle the situation, they can check the serial number on your device and then on your firearm, and then find out where that was acquired from based on the serial number. It's the same thing as buying a Dell computer. A Dell computer has a serial
Right,
number on it.
okay.
It's categorized in
So-
the manufacturer's databases.
Gotcha.
This kind of
Okay.
comes back to my earlier question, which I'll bring up again. Should dealers be charged with, or at least should victims be able to sue dealers when there is some sort of gun-related crime?
So you sold me a gun at a PA gun show.
Not even.
I-
Not even.
What?
I am a licensed dealer of guns.
Okay, you're a
I
licensed
have
dealer
a store,
of guns.
and you can come in. I have to give you a background check. I give you the background check. You pass. Everything's good. You obtain the gun legally from me.
I use that firearm to commit a crime, and then my family members say, "Hey, you're responsible because you sold this."
No, the
firearm
family
to
members of the
me."
people you killed.
Oh, okay. The family
Or
members of the people that
Yes.
I committed the crime against say, "Hey, you sold the firearm to this person. we're going to sue you.
My problem with that is
don't
a
know.
class action lawsuit will do no justice for the lives lost.
That's
you cannot,
true.
Because what is a gun store owner going to pay these families that's going to bring the life back of their child?
Well,
So
maybe the family isn't looking for payment. Maybe they're just looking to put that gun shop out of business.
But that doesn't really solve anything, because I could buy a hammer from Home Depot and kill someone, but what are you gonna do? Sue Home Depot for selling a hammer?
Potentially.
I guess so. It doesn't really solve anything in my mind. That's just my
at the end of
personal
the day,
opinion.
people are still dead. I think it's so easy. It's kind of like it's with anything else too. You're not involved, so it doesn't really affect how you feel. Is kind of how it goes. I feel the same way about a lot of things. I do it all the time. I think humans just are so prone to doing that because it's like, why are you going to even... One, it's impossible to subject yourself to the idea of your loved one being massacred. Two, you can't simulate that, even if you tried. I think the really difficult part when talking about gun violence as it pertains to guns is that it is really, really difficult to perceive the amount of agony that gun violence in America causes families.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the fact that Sandy Hook was children, small children.
Even think about something as simple as the whole George Zimmerman case. That created
Right.
so much grief for that family, and no matter how you stand
And he
on
was
that
not
position, no matter where you stand on that, you can't deny that it created grief for that family because a gun was used.
Right, like take
Whether or not it was
take
used.
the whole narrative
Yep.
away from it. Look at it as a gun
Was used to
took
kill.
a human life,
Yep.
unwarranted and undeserved.
Potentially. Which I would, I know where I stand on it, but I don't know where other people stand, so I don't want to necessarily give an opinion there. But I would like to agree with you. But
I'm comfortable stating my opinion.
yeah,
I understand that.
I would
our
like to agree
audience
that whole case was
may
just
disagree with that, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like I said, if that
Yep.
was one of your family members, if that was your son, if that
Yep.
was your brother, if that was your nephew, you would be distraught.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it was a firearm that did it. It was a
Yep.
person who was a part of Neighborhood Watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I was saying that, people that are involved with neighborhood watches or some sort of police alternative force with citizens or civilians that have weapons, they have to be trained. You can't have somebody just... You have to make sure that they will use it responsibly. And it's a
I can get
very
behind that.
hard thing. How do you do it? You can make somebody sit there for 60 hours worth of classes just so that they can defend their neighborhood. But they could still potentially use it inappropriately.
Because they don't take it seriously. Yeah.
They don't take it seriously.
I mean, how many hours did you sit through a physics class through high school, but you didn't care enough to actually learn it? Maybe some people, So yeah, I
Right,
can
like,
understand
don't
the same
remember
thing.
all the formulas.
Yeah,
I
can understand a person sitting
understand
through
the
hours
basics,
of
but
a firearm class and still not retaining any information. Unfortunately.
It's almost as if they go in with their brain shut off.
Yep. Some people just treat it that way, but I don't know.
They treat it that way, but at the end of the day, the question remains, is it too late for gun reform? Because I still think about all of the illegal weapons that people own in the United States, especially people doing criminal acts,
Yeah.
regardless of opinion as to whether or not you agree if the acts are criminal, like selling marijuana or whatever. It's still criminal, and it involves risk of life, both from the police, but also just from other people in the game.
Yeah.
So they carry weapons.
Go ahead.
Weed's on the Jersey ballot this year again.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Legalization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, just unfortunately, when you have people acquiring gadgets that carry weight and the potential to take someone's life with them, no matter what it is, you're going to have benefits and you're going to have downsides. And I think just making sure people are educated on anything. I mean, even it's something as simple as a knife. I own several knives, but you know what? I think it's very important that if I bring that knife around someone who's not educated on how to use it, I go to them with caution. And I mean, I remember something as simple as cutting wood with Dan on our backpacking trip. And I was thinking, hey, position your legs like this. You do not want your legs in a position in which the hatchet could
You're not very cautious
come off
with
and,
that thing,
and
though.
strike your legs. I mean, sure, whatever. But it's like, I think no matter what you're using, if it's something that could potentially injure someone, having education behind it to whatever degree is incredibly important. And I'll just leave it at that.
I don't
think
disagree.
at least gun restrictions, gun control, gun reform, it's difficult to talk on a federal basis. Because so far it's been up to the state. We have state-based restrictions, so in New Jersey it's very difficult to get a gun, but you can just drive across to Pennsylvania, go to a PA gun show, buy a gun in the parking lot, and drive home. It's this universal reform is difficult to do. Not universal, national, I guess. A national reform is difficult. A federal reform, because the Constitution, guarantees your right to own a weapon. But that's pretty much all it says. It doesn't say anything about background checks. So it's kind of left up to the states then at that point. Well,
Yeah.
what do we think? Who should be able to own a gun? Hunters, people with land that they need to kill the groundhogs that are eating their crops. But at the end of the day, it's still the state. Because how do you push out a federal national reform for guns when Texas will never back down and California doesn't want guns?
Yeah. It's a complicated mixture. And hopefully we'll get there one day with a broader understanding, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I think that we're still very much up in the air as a nation as to what to do, even just thinking about the constitutional right to own a gun. It's so hard. It's never been done before. Backtracking, or like you can amend an amendment with an amendment, but nobody's ever just like taken an amendment out. It's not possible. I don't think.
Yeah,
It's literally called amendments.
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to...
It doesn't make sense.
Prohibition, they didn't just remove that amendment, they added a new amendment saying that amendment is no longer a valid amendment.
Yeah.
Right.
Why not just remove the amendment?
Yeah, well...
Why not just create a new document?
Our forefathers wanted us to die in agony
We
over
should
the
just-
disorganization.
Every presidential election, every new president, we should write a new constitution.
Wow, that's a whole thing I'm not
No,
going to
that's-
get
I'm
off
pretty
of.
sure-
I don't
No,
know.
that's a terrible idea.
Hey, listen,
I'm pretty
I'm...
sure Iceland did something like that, where
Yeah.
like they built their constitution as an island. That was like relatively recent.
Interesting.
Well, Iceland also has like a total population of 10 people. So.
Listen, I'm done with guns. I'm done today.
All right.
Thank you
Bye,
all for
everyone.
being here.
Bye.
Catch you in the next one.